Okay, who's been waiting for this one? Probably a couple of people. This will be One Piece live action Netflix series episode breakdown. We're going to be looking at episode 5 today, Eat at Baratie. I was originally going to do episodes 5 and 6 in the same video, but there's a lot of stuff that happens in these episodes. So I decided to just do episode 5 today. Hey, at the rate that I'm going, I might be able to finish off season 1 breakdowns before we get to season 2, okay? Maybe we will. I don't know. Season 2 has been confirmed. We just don't have any kind of like release date yet. That'll probably be for a while. Personally, I don't think we're going to get season 2 next year at all. Maybe in 2025 is kind of what I'm thinking of right now. Maybe mid 2025 in like the summer, possibly. Maybe I'll be surprised though. Maybe it'll be something earlier, but I'm going to temper my expectations here. Okay. I'm going to temper my expectations as Mihawk tempers his blade. Oh no, Yoru's caught in the cobwebs. There we go. All right, so yeah, we got the Mihawk episode. That alone, I kind of wanted to just talk about on its own because it's the Mihawk episode. I mean, it's Sanji's episode too, but a lot of stuff happening here. Okay, so we cut back to right where we left off at episode 4. So the Straw Hats have defeated Kuro. The Syrup Village arc wrapped. They got the Mary from Kaya. Usopp and Kaya kissed. That was a nice little moment. They were clearly, interested in one another. They were very clearly like, oh, okay, I like you, you like me. So it's nice in the live action. They just kind of like threw that out there as like, yeah, we already knew that, so here we go. So they're sailing away from Syrup Village when Garp and his team of trained Marines, including Koby and Helmeppo, are hot on their tail, okay? You know, I kind of like, because I've watched the series twice now. I've kind of gone through it like the first viewing, and then the second time to do these. And I really like you could just look at this like a parallel timeline, because in the original timeline, Garp, I don't even think, is really aware of Luffy's pirate activities until after he gets his first bounty. Like when Luffy makes the, big waves in the east, defeats Arlong, gets the 30 million. I think that's when Garp first is aware of this. So it's interesting to look at it from a perspective of, okay, like, imagine what would happen if Garp was aware Luffy was a pirate at the very beginning of his journey. What would Garp have attempted to do? And obviously, Garp does not want to see his grandson, well, he doesn't want to see Luffy be a pirate, but he also doesn't want to see Luffy get killed. I mean, that's, he's his grandpa and everything like that. And so he's probably like, okay, I'm going to try to deter Luffy from going to the Grand Line. Luffy's going to the Grand Line. He's an idiot. He's going to try to be a pirate. He's going to get himself killed by stronger pirates, okay? So basically what he's doing right now is like, all right, I'm going to get a team of Marines together. They're not going to be the best of the best. They're literally going to be new recruits and cadets. I think the reason Garp did that is because throughout the season, Garp slowly has to begin to amp up his methods in order to deter Luffy from becoming a pirate, because that's a really difficult mountain to climb. So this is like the first attempt at this, where Garp is seeing his grandson for the first time in a while, Luffy, and, he looks through the spyglass and is like, Grandpa? And we get a nice little flashback of Luffy as a kid, and Garp there, played by Vincent Regan, and he's just like, it's like, Luffy, what are you doing? He's like, I'm building a pirate ship, Grandpa. He's like, the hell you are? And he's just like chucking the pirate ship, like little kid Luffy's making like a little tiny raft. He's like, I'm gonna go out to sea and be a pirate. He's like, "Rrr," and just like destroys the pirate ship. And then I think that's the moment where he begins to like train Luffy. He's like, oh, I'm gonna train you to be a Marine starting today. And in the manga, it's very brutal. Like, he picks up Luffy and like throws him into a jungle for like a week or something. I think he ties him to some balloons and sends him up into the sky and just like, have fun, Luffy, your training's today, I'm gonna go have lunch, so that was a nice little flashback. So Garp attacks the Mary. They do some like superficial damage to it, like they destroy one of the railings, but it's like nothing severe. Once again, the reason Garp enlisted a bunch of cadets to help him with this is he doesn't want anybody really skilled, because then they could actually maybe get a kill shot out on Luffy. So, like, for right now, at the beginning here, Garp is maybe a little naive, and he thinks that, like, okay, if I just show up and I have this imposing presence as a Marine Vice Admiral, and I have this big, giant ship, and I start shooting cannonballs, maybe Luffy will lose his motivation, and he won't want to be a pirate, he won't want to go to the Grand Line. It's a stupid idea, but hey, he's starting small here, okay? Although Garp is gonna go from 0 to 100 pretty quick in this episode. So they try to do that. Nami is the only one that is competent on an actual ship here. So she's like, hoist the main yard, go to starboard, load the cannons, fire back. Now, Usopp, this was a funny scene because Usopp is like, oh, okay, yeah, load the cannons, right? So he goes to load the cannons, but he like drops the cannonballs and they just fly all over the deck and stuff. So Usopp doesn't actually get a chance to load a cannonball and fire it, okay? And in fact, he even picks up a cannonball and looks at it. And here's the kicker with Usopp. Here's the thing. So Usopp is the greatest marksman, or one of the greatest marksmen in the East. We all know that. Like, just innately, his skills are impeccable, right? But I started to think, like, how many opportunities would Usopp really had in Syrup Village to load and fire a cannon? Probably not very many. He uses a slingshot most of the time. So I'm like, okay, he's like takes the cannonball and he's looking at the cannon and he's like, this is a different model than the one I'm used to. You know what I mean? I really don't know. He's like, I'm sure I could figure it out. Because in the manga, they actually had time to, like, do target practice at this point, where they took out the cannon. I'm sure Usopp had some time to, like, it wasn't under duress of being fired upon by a Marine Vice Admiral in a giant battleship. It was like, they had time to figure out, like, how to load a cannon, how to fire it. And then once Usopp got the hang of that, yeah, he's a dead shot, sure. But in this situation, they've been at sea for like 20 minutes, like Usopp has just left his hometown, and he's like, oh God, there's Marines already. Oh, I don't know, how do I load that? How does that go in here? And so it's a little bit understandable that they have no idea what they're doing. And I think we're gonna look back on this scene with some like a nice little smile later on in the seasons when the Straw Hats have accomplished a lot more. We'll look back on this scene and be like, oh my God, their first naval combat, man, that was really fun, yeah, they've come a long way since then, right? Okay, so Luffy eventually manages to knock back one of the cannonballs. He uses Gumu Gumu no Balloon, which in the live action he specifies I didn't even know I could do that. That was the first time I tried that. All right, so he bounces back the cannonball. The CG with Balloon is like, I think Luffy's techniques are going to be kind of hit or miss with the CGI, I feel, especially when we start getting into way more complicated things later. His pistol is pretty good because it's like usually pretty quick and fast, and you could do some practical effects with that as well, depending, like if someone grabs Luffy's fist when it's stretchy, you could do stuff with that. But stuff like Balloon, it has to be pretty much all CG, and it's like, all right, yeah, it's a little noticeable, but it's once again pretty quick, and it just bounces the cannonball back, and it hits the main mast of Garp's marine ship, and it just like causes the sail to like collapse on him. And Garp, okay, so Garp goes from like, up until now he's been relatively serious. He's been a little bit jokey around with Koby and stuff like that. For the most part, he's a pretty serious Marine. This is the point where we see him just snap, and he's just like, and I'm pretty sure every Marine on deck would be looking at Garp right now like, okay, Vice Admiral is kind of insane. All right, that's cool. But Garp is kind of insane because in the manga, Garp will just, like, have you seen what's been going on with Hachinosu? He'll just charge in laughing and, screaming bloody murder. So, yeah, Garp doing that is a little bit like, oh boy, I'll tell you. Yeah, you're driving me to an early grave, Luffy. Okay, so it was a little weird at first, but on the second viewing, I just found it hilarious. I was just like, okay, yeah, that is pretty funny that he just loses himself right there in like fits of rage over his grandson that's just like defying him at every turn. Okay. So they knock the mainsail off the battleship, so the battleship kind of has to stop to do repairs, and so that allows the Going Merry to escape into a fog bank, and while in this fog bank, that's when Luffy's nose detects the aroma of delicious food, and then that's how they end up at the Baratie, the seafaring restaurant. The Baratie, located in the Sambas region of the East Blue, and geography is everything because the Sambas region is mentioned many times in this episode. They cared about geography, damn it. Oh, I just love it. Every time, every episode, when they reference geography as actual legit locations that really exist in the One Piece world, just love it. Okay, so before we go to the Baratie, though, I do have a couple lines I want to cover with Koby and Helmeppo really quick here. Okay, so I'll just cover the stuff with the Marines because that's going to be set up for later on. Okay, so after this moment, after, you know, he's actually gotten a chance to speak with his grandson, to speak with Luffy, and Luffy's just like, I'm gonna be a pirate, I'm not gonna be a Marine, I'm not coming with you. And Garp is like, ah! He's like, oh, okay. Oh, you want to be a pirate? Oh, okay, we'll see how you like it when you're a pirate. And he goes downstairs, and he takes out a Den Mushi. Koby's kind of listening at the doorway here, and Garp takes out the receiver, and he calls up Mihawk. All right, so this is the first arc that we're changing things pretty significantly here on how this is all going down. But don't worry. This makes logical sense. It really does. This isn't just random stuff for the sake of random stuff. If Garp was getting involved in the early East Blue and he was like, I don't want Luffy to go to the Grand Line, I need him to understand the absolute mammoth gap of power that exists on the Grand Line between the rest of the four blues, especially the East Blue. So Garp calls up Dracule Mihawk. Mihawk is in the Grand Line slaughtering the shit out of Krieg's entire pirate armada, okay? So we see Don Krieg here, played by Milton Shaw, I think. I'm sorry about I'm mispronouncing. That's just how it goes. That's a standard when we're doing this. I don't even know if I pronounce Vincent Reagan right. Is it Reagan or Reagan? I'm not really sure. But anyway, we do see a brief scene with him here, and this is probably the highlight of the entire episode. I mean, the duel at the end is also really up there when we do see Zoro and Mihawk's duel. I would probably put that at the number one, but this scene is really good, all right? So we get introduced to Mihawk. We get to see his wanted poster, you know, Dracule Mihawk, bounty canceled by the order of the world government. So if you're watching One Piece for the first time through the live action, you have no idea what's going on. This is explained later what they are, like what the Warlords are. Helmeppo, actually, of all people, explains it to Koby. Helmeppo is way more integral to the plot in this version, and I'm okay with that. So anyway, he calls up Mihawk. Mihawk is on a beach. He has one of those Bluetooth Den Mushi, which I believe are probably just going to replace the baby Den Mushi. So in lieu of baby Den Mushi that are just little miniature snails that you got to hold in your hand and talk into, I think the reason they're doing that, well, for two reasons. Number one, it probably saves on budget a little bit, so you don't have to always be animating this little CGI snail that people are holding. But also, you know, it frees up their hands for the actors, because in the manga and anime, it's kind of a little thing where you can just draw the characters to do whatever. But in the case with acting, you know, instead of like having, I mean, it would be kind of funny to see Mihawk just holding a little snail in his hand while using Yoru to just slash up all of Krieg's fleet. That would be cool, but it's nice to just have like, okay, it's in your ear, you could just put it in there as a prop. You don't have to like animate it or anything like that, right? You don't have to do CG. And so he has that, and he's just like, oh, just one moment, Vice Admiral. So Mihawk is played by Stephen John Ward, and my God, I saw a video recently where Japanese fans of One Piece were responding and reacting to the live action, and pretty much there was like this unanimous thing that like, holy crap, Mihawk looks... How does Mihawk look exactly like Mihawk? Like, they nailed... This is one of the things. Him and Craig Fairbrass, who we're going to see playing Zeff in this episode, just nail their acting for these characters, and the casting choices are just perfect. Okay, so Mihawk looks 100% like Mihawk. Like, if anything else, like, even people that are detractors of the live action that just don't like it, you still even have to admit that Mihawk looks exactly like and talks like exactly like Mihawk in this episode, all right? And he actually has a lot more of appearances. He shows up in episode 6, and he also shows up at the end of episode 8. So he makes a couple more appearances in the East than he does in the manga. So he calls up Mihawk. He's like, yeah, just hold on a second, Vice Admiral. And he's like, yes, I have a pirate I need you to go chase after. And he's just like, who's the quarry? And just shing, shing, and he's just slicing up Krieg's crew. There's the Dreadnought Saber, which is Krieg's flagship. We see that docked off the side of this beach that Mihawk is just slaughtering everybody. And it's just bombarding the beach with, like, cannon fire. And Mihawk is just annoyed because he's in the middle of having to try to have a phone call. And there's these explosions happening. It's like being a rude person in a cafe. It's like, excuse me, I'm trying to have a conversation here. And so he just takes out Yoru, and he's just like, one moment, Vice Admiral. And then just world's strongest slash slices the Dreadnought Saber in half. So we still see it in the live action. It just doesn't happen at the Baratie. But we still see Mihawk wiping out Krieg's crew. We see him just slicing the giant galleon in half. And we even hear the Wilhelm scream in the background, like, ah! You know, we hear that in the background, which the Wilhelm scream fits in One Piece. I don't care what you say. It 100% fits in this story. Okay, so then Krieg steps out. Krieg steps out. He's looking like Krieg. He's just like, enough! And we even see Pearl off to the side. So they did their due diligence with this. They really did. They're like, okay, look. We're not going to have the whole thing with Krieg at the Baratie. We're going to have to move things around. We're going to have to streamline this a touch. So instead of having a whole arc with Krieg, let's just have Mihawk wipe Krieg out, which he easily could. But they have Gin in the episode. Gin is still here. And they even put Pearl in the background. As Krieg is walking up to Mihawk to confront him, you see Pearl on the ground just dead. So you see the armor and everything, the guys there, and it's just like, oh, okay, they at least... Because there's like 3 members of Krieg's crew that are actually notable. You got Krieg himself, you got Pearl, and you got Gin, all right? There's a couple of other people that might be, like, you might remember, like, oh, that guy that wore that one outfit, you know the dude, you know, yeah, exactly. But those are the 3 main people, and they actually included Pearl, so, you know, kudos to them for doing that, okay? He's dead, he's a corpse, but we see him there, okay? That's nice. That's a little attention to detail is all I'm asking. So Krieg comes out, and he's just like, you know, you've attacked my men, you've destroyed my fleet, you know, why are you after us? We did nothing to you. And Mihawk just kind of looks straight at Krieg and is just like, you woke me from my nap. And I love that line because, number one, it's delivered perfectly by Stephen John Ward. But if you go back and you read the chapters in the Baratie, we're discussing Mihawk, okay? So they were in the Baratie, and then Gin was talking about how, oh yeah, our entire fleet was like wiped out by one man. His name was Dracula Mihawk. Now Zeff, being one of the, you know, he was the captain of the Cook Pirates, being a pirate, and you know, back in the day, he knows all about Mihawk. He knows how dangerous the dude is. And so all of the cooks at the Baratie and all of like the Straw Hats are there, like Luffy and Zoro and everybody are there. And of course Zoro hears Mihawk and he's listening everything. And he's like, well, why would Mihawk do such a thing? Why would he wipe out an entire fleet? And Zeff comes up with a theory. Zeff is the one that says, maybe you woke him up from his nap. And Gin is like, don't joke about this. Our entire fleet was annihilated. All my friends are dead. And Zeff is like, oh no, you misunderstand me. I wasn't joking. You might have just woken him up from his nap, and he got pissed and attacked you. That's the kind of place the Grand Line is. It's kind of beyond logic, but that kind of stuff could happen. And in this episode, that is what in fact happened. Because when Mihawk rolls up in the manga, and they ask him, you know, why are you doing this? Why are you chasing after us? Why did you slice our ship in half? Mihawk just says, oh, I'm just passing the time, or I'm just doing it for fun. But the idea that the initial cause for what pissed off Mihawk to wipe out the initial fleet, because there were 50 ships in Don Krieg's fleet. Mihawk initially sunk 49 of them and then came into the East Blue to finish off the last one just to kill time because he was bored, right? In this case, like, he just annihilates all 50 in one go, including the Dreadnought Saber, right? But I love that little hint of just like, oh, maybe you woke him up from his nap. And he's like, hey, it's like, you woke me from my nap. It's like, no! You know, I love that. And Krieg takes out his guns, and this big cannon shoots up off his shoulder, and he's just like, well, allow me to make your nap permanent then! And he fires the guns. Cool slow motion Matrix shot where Mihawk takes out Yoru here, and he kind of just slices the cannonball and the two bullets, and they just explode behind him. And Mihawk is just like, what a disappointing final gambit. And then this awesome Spanish music is playing on the background, and then he just walks toward Krieg. And go back and look at the episode. Go back and look at the expression on Milton Shaw's face as he's playing Krieg when he pretty much realizes that he's dead. He realizes he just fired a cannonball and 2 guns and pistols, and like a sword was enough to cut all 3 of them in like the same time. So he realizes he's screwed. Even Krieg, who's not the brightest, he's not the sharpest knife in the box or whatever. I don't know, man. He even realizes, like, okay, this isn't gonna end well. The look on his face is kind of like, like, all right. I guess I'm dead. and in fact, Mihawk just cuts him off screen. You can hear Krieg's like blood like death throes over the dead and mushy, just and then we just see him lying dead in front of Mihawk, and the cannon just, and then Mihawk's like, Vice Admiral, you have piqued my interest. I suppose I'll go after this Luffy. All right, so that's our introduction to Mihawk there, and I'd say that's probably the best one you could really have. Okay, that was picture perfect. Okay, so Koby and Helmeppo are speaking on deck a little later, and because Koby's never heard of the Warlords, he has no idea who the Warlords of the Sea are or anything like that, and Helmeppo has to be the one to explain it to him. Now, Helmeppo, the way he's talking about the Warlords is not 100% accurate. The story he basically gives, and keep in mind, like, the only thing Helmeppo would know is the stuff that his dad told him, which, the Warlords, I imagine, are larger-than-life characters in the One Piece world, so there's a lot of rumors and stories thrown around about them, so it's not 100% accurate, but it's close enough. And basically, Helmeppo says that, like, back in the day, there were 7 strong pirates, and they were the ones that ruled the entire sea, and the government could have fought them, but they would have lost so much manpower, so instead they asked them to join the government, and then they did. So they became privateers, legal pirates, okay, like government dogs, essentially. So, like I said, not the exact thing that they are. Helmeppo kind of made it sound like the Warlords were some kind of unified group that came together, and then they all decided to fight the government together, which would have been an extremely impressive force. Like, if the Warlords all worked together to fight against the government, holy shit, that would have been interesting. But that's not really what happened. They were just like separate, really strong pirates in their own right that the government approached and saw if, like, hey, instead of fighting us, you want to work for us, we'll make it worth your while, kind of a situation, right? And not all pirates accept it. Like, even Ace was accepted the role of warlord and he turned it down, right? So that's just how that works there. But this has a great line, this scene with Helmeppo and Koby, where Koby is sitting there and he's just like, why would the world government, why would the Marines work with filthy pirates? And Helmeppo looks at Koby and he tells him, Koby, you might be pretty good at tying a knot, but you don't know shit about how the world works. Okay? And I love that line because, hey, if we're going to focus on Koby in the East Blue, which we don't really do in the manga, we just kind of go away from him. We have the cover story, but that's it. If we're going to focus on Koby, then I want to see Koby's, like, as he goes from this idealistic young man where he's like, the Marines are all for justice 100%, he's going to have a wake-up call sooner or later, and it's going to be sooner. He's going to learn about how the world works, and he has a conversation with Garp later that really exemplifies it in an amazing way, so I can't wait till I get to that, okay? But yeah, I'm like, if we're gonna focus on Koby becoming a Marine, then let's actually show him learning about how, like, okay, this is the Warlords, and these are the Yonko, and then, yeah, this is the world government, and this is how the Marines operate. It's not fair, it's not really just, but as Garp says in a moment, it's kind of the best we have, sort of thing. Like, the alternative with there not being Marines is way worse, okay? So we'll get to that. So Straw Hats arrive at the Baratie. I love the Baratie set. This is a set that was showcased a lot during production. We saw a lot of pictures and photos from set on the Baratie, so this is probably my favorite set in the story, and they definitely get their mileage out of it. 5 and 6 are mainly focused in the Baratie. As we saw in the trailer, Arlong eventually shows up at the Baratie with Karubi and Chu. in the next episode. We even get a scene even after that. There's an episode 7 or 8, there's a scene with Zeff and Garp in the Baratie. So they definitely utilize this set to the fullest extent. But it's a really cool set, all right? There's a great scene where they walk in, the Straw Hats walk in, Luffy's wearing like his overalls. Usopp is dressed up like a captain. This is also from one of the cover pages or one of the, it's in the art book. It's in one of the color walks. But I love that because Usopp walks in like he's wearing a captain coat and like a bicorn hat. And he's like, yeah, I'm a pirate. I'm a captain. I'm awesome. Because this is Usopp, like from his perspective, he's been out of his village for like a day and he's already been engaged in sea combat. He's already coming up with the stories in his head of just like, oh yeah, you know, we fought against a Marine battleship. We fought off a Marine vice admiral and it was all because of me, Captain Usopp. So he's like super cocky right now. He walks in. The host of the Baratie, the person that like kind of leads everybody to their table, is a fishman. And they don't really linger on it too much. They don't like, Luffy doesn't look at him like, whoa, you're a fishman. That's cool. That's weird. They just kind of like treat him as any other human being, which is a nice touch there. And he's like, oh, I would like a table for my crew here, you know, and of course the fishman host is like, yes, well, sir, there's a reservation. We can make a reservation in 3 weeks. And Luffy just kind of is like, I don't think you know who I am. And then Usopp kind of leans in like, I don't think you know who he is. You know, he's Monkey D. Luffy. I'm Monkey D. Luffy. And so they're like, yeah, like, and the host is like, oh, yes, of course, you're Monkey D. Luffy. Well, of course you could have a table in 3 weeks. And so Luffy and Usopp kind of already begin to like look at the tables and begin to walk down. Nami then has this cool scene where she walks up and she's just like, excuse them, they're idiots, and slips the guy some money. So it's like, yep, okay, that's how things work here. Okay, I'll see you right to your table then. You know, just like, so yeah. Meanwhile, Usopp and Luffy are convinced because they didn't see Nami, you know, give some extra money to the waiter, to the host. So they just assume that like, see, it worked. He understands. He knows who you are. He's like, damn straight. So they go to the table. And then we cut back into the kitchen, where we are introduced to Sanji's character, played by Taz Skylar, and Zeff's character, played by Craig Fairbrass. Both do an amazing job. I want everybody to understand the level of effort that Taz went into to playing Sanji, okay? This man took actual kickboxing classes. This man went and learned how to actually cook. He took cooking classes and stuff like that. This dude was committed to the role 110%. And he looks like Sanji. He has some riz like Sanji. He is Sanji, all right? And also on the opposite end, Zeff looks, well, not on the opposite end, on the same end of that. Well, you know, Zeff is a lot older and gruffer, but he makes the character work perfectly, Craig Fairbrass. Him and Taz have worked together on another movie or another show, I believe, and I think it was actually Taz that recommended Craig in the role of Zeff. I believe that's how that went down, because they'd already worked together on other properties, so they were aware of each other, and that worked when as they're playing off each other here in at the Baratie. Okay, so it worked out really good. We also see Patty. Patty's there with the blue hair. Looks really good. We don't see Carne, unfortunately. Carne got cut, but we see Patty. Patty's there. Okay. So Sanji is making a dish called True Bluefin Sauté, which is actually a recipe that is found in the Sanji cookbooks. There's this, in the manga, the way that Sanji ends up becoming a waiter is like, oh yeah, all the other waiters left or they quit because I guess the danger of working at the Baratie. So that's the reason he became a waiter. In this adaptation, he's making this really fancy like dish that was not on the menu that he just decided to make. You know, he's like, he made the decision to make something like this. I could imagine Sanji goes to a table in the live action and he's like, all right, listen, everybody. I know the menu, you know, blah, 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 blah. The menu is okay. The menu's all right. But if you want to really treat your taste buds today, if you really want to have an explosion in your mouth, I have a dish that's on my special menu, the special Sanji menu, and I'm going to go, and I would make that for you guys right here. And they were like, yeah, okay, we can do that. And he's like, got it. Because the idea is Sanji is sick and tired of doing the same thing all over again, like every single day, because the menu, everybody orders, like, as Zeff puts it, everyone orders, like, prime rib, medium well. You know, everyone orders the same kind of steaks. You know, you go to a steakhouse, people order the same shit every single day on the menu. And so Sanji's like, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of slinging these steaks day after day after day. I want to do something different. I want to do something unique that actually complements the damn ingredients, you know, that actually treats it with the respect they deserve. And Zeff and him get into an argument over this this, because Zeff is like, hey, man, little eggplant, this is what we serve. It's my fucking restaurant. I'm the one that set the menu. If the customer orders it, you give it to them, all right? I don't care if you make 100,000 steaks every single day for the rest of your life. That's the way it works while you work here, okay? So they have an argument, and Zeff kicks him off the line. So now you're working as a waiter. Get out there and wait tables, bus tables. That's your job now. And it's more of like, think of it like a boot camp kind of situation with Zeff being sort of the drill sergeant. It's just like, private, get out there and you clean the bathroom with your toothbrush if you think you're gonna mouth off to me. It's kind of like that, and I can kind of see it. And it works. Craig Fairbrass definitely sells the scene. I will say that, okay? And Taz does as well. Like the level of like frustration when he's just like, freaking old man, piece of shit, go bust tables and freaking hell. He walks out into the dining room area. Immediately he is confronted. He sees the Fullbody scene. Now it's a little different where Fullbody is arguing with a pirate. It's actually the pirate. I think his name is Galley or Golly, Crescent Moon Golly. He's the dude that he's in a lot of like. I think he was in Romance Dawn version 1 or 2, but he does show up in the actual One Piece manga at the end of Whole Cake Island. Remember that scene in Whole Cake where that parallel scene between Sanji and Zeff were, serving food at the same time? Sanji was serving food when he's back on the Thousand Sunny with the Straw Hats, and Zeff was serving food back at the Baratie. You see Crescent Moon Golly in the background with his crew, like, we want food, that kind of stuff. So we see him in the live action. That's cool. And then Fullbody's also there with his date. And so instead of Fullbody, having a conflict with Sanji, because we just kind of have to move it along, he has a minor role here. He doesn't have a big role to play, but they get into a fight. Fullbody takes out a pistol about to shoot Golly, and then Sanji, that's when we see his fighting prowess, where he just kicks. So the same basic premise is we get to see that Sanji's a badass, okay? It's just we get to see it a little bit more directly here, straight on. As soon as Sanji walks out of the kitchen, he's like, what is this? It just bam, 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 knocks them both down, and then he walks over to the Straw Hats table, and he asks for their orders. He's just like, hey, welcome to our shitty restaurant where we serve the same shitty food every single day. I'm Sanji and I'll be your waiter. What would you like, please? Okay. Zoro, of course, just orders, just give me beer. I just want beer. Usopp's like, oh yeah, I'll take some beer too. Luffy's like, I'll take one of everything and some milk. Okay. And then Sanji notices Nami in this scene. And so that's the thing. A lot of people were like, okay, how is Taz gonna play Sanji? Because Sanji, I'll tell you what, Sanji back in the East, I'd have to go back and reread all of it, but I don't think Sanji is, the way that he's around women is the same as it is now. It's dialed down a little bit, but what I mean is, like, Sanji, at a certain point in the story, he just kind of starts, like, whenever he sees a woman, just kind of goes over the top with it, like, starts to, like, drool all over himself like a pretty girl, I think back in the East Blue, Sanji had a little bit more class. He was a little bit more like with the Riz, as was the parlance that would be used these days. And so he flirts, he flirts. He's a little bit of a ladies' man, but he's not like overly like just exuding like I'm a pervert kind of thing. You know what I mean? So he sees Nami and he's just like, he's listing off the wines and stuff. He's like, oh, would you like, something sweet for someone sweet? And he kind of winks at Nami, and Nami's just looking at him like, is there something wrong with your eye? Just like, oh, they're just blinded by your beauty. And then Nami's like, okay. So it's it's actually a cute scene. I actually really like it. And then they're going through all their drink orders, and then we get to Nami, and Nami's just like, I'll just take some water. It's like, oh, do you want sparkling water, mineral water, crushed ice, cubed? What would I get for the most beautiful woman in the restaurant? And then Nami's like, just plain water in a plain glass, please. And it's just like, okay, that kind of, and he's like, oh, gotcha. And then just like walks away. I'm like, all right, that's a cute little scene. And after Sanji leaves, the rest of the Straw Hats are kind of making fun of the whole moment where Usopp kind of looks over at Nami. He's like, Nami's got a boyfriend, and all the guys start laughing, and Nami kind of begins to chuckle. Listen, I love that scene. Because, number one, it's a little bit more realistic because if there was an interaction like that where the waiter is very clearly hitting on you, your friends are going to be like, oh, you got a boyfriend, someone likes you, and just like, oh my God, you guys suck, like that's a cute scene. I really like that. And it begins to showcase Nami's like cold exterior beginning to crack a little bit. It's beginning to show that Nami's like, hey, this isn't just me getting with these pirates to rob them blind. Luffy, Zoro, Usopp, they're actually kind of cool. And in this episode, we're actually going to see more of that, where Nami begins to hang out with Zoro a bit. They have a little bit of a drinking game kind of thing, because they're both heavy drinkers. That's canon. And it's a scene where it's like Nami begins to question, like, you know, maybe these guys can be my friends. I do care about them. They are my friends. It's not could they be. It's like they are my friends. I'm starting to care about them. And things go a little bit differently for Nami in the live action than they do in the manga at the Baratie, okay? So that was a really good scene there. Okay, let's see. What scene do I want to tackle next? All right, Luffy paying the bill. Let's tackle that. That's a great scene. So eventually, they eat a bunch of food. It just looks delicious, too. It looks like the cast just pigged out on all this food in front of them, and they're just, like, stuffed. And, like, oh, my God, that was the most amazing meal of my life. I think Nami is, like, saying, like, oh, my God, I'm not going to have to eat for, like, you know, a week or something after this. I am stuffed forever, right? And so they all have, like, let's, like, have a toast. You know, we're going to be the greatest pirate crew ever. This is amazing. We had our full of food. We had a naval battle. Nami does bring up the whole thing with Garp and just, like, why didn't you tell us, you know, that you were, you know, Garp's grandson of a Marine Vice Admiral? You're kind of keeping it from us. The rest of the Straw Hats don't really worry too much about it. They're just like, he had his reasons, you know, and at the end of the day, does the fact that the Straw Hats learn about Garp being Luffy's grandpa, does that really change anything, like, at this point in the story? Does it change anything for the bigger scope of One Piece? They're gonna find out eventually anyway at Enies Lobby. It's just, it happens a little earlier here, okay? So Nami is a little bit hesitant about it because it's like, you know, Garp is like a Marine hero. He's like a big deal. It's not just that, like, Luffy is related to some random Marine. It's that he's related to the Marine hero Vice Admiral Garp. That's a big deal. And Nami is just like, why didn't he tell us about that? And maybe that might be Nami reflecting on her own, like, oh, I haven't told them about Arlong. I haven't told them about my life, so I'm keeping secrets. Why is Luffy keeping secrets? So it might be some kind of thing there where, like, Nami's trying to justify it subconsciously. I don't know. So, but they bring the check. It's like, okay, it was time to pay the check. And Luffy just kind of takes out the check or whatever and just writes on it. He basically writes, like, Monkey D. Luffy, future king of the pirates, put it on my tab, basically, and gives it to Sanji. Sanji looks at it and he's just like, okay, all right, okay, we can do that. So he goes back, hands it to Zeff, and then Zeff comes out in the dining room and just like, who the hell is Monkey D. Luffy? Who the hell's Monkey D. Luffy? And Luffy's like, present! And it's like, oh, this is gonna be great. Zeff walks over to him and just like, yeah, you don't seem to understand how things work here. Baratie does not accept credit. You eat, you pay, in Barry right now. And Luffy's like, oh, you don't understand. I've already paid the bill. After I become king of the pirates and find the One Piece, I will pay you the bill in interest. So consider it already paid. I'm a man of my word. And Zeff is like, find the One Piece, king of the pirates. All right, you're coming with me. And just, like, grabs Luffy out of the seat, shoves him in the kitchen, and is like, all right, that food you ate out there, that is 1 year's worth of washing dishes. Tosses him an apron. You know, second service is starting. Get to work. And Luffy's like, And so the rest of the crew is just back there at the booth, just sitting there like, all right, guess we're going to be here a while, I guess. And Zoro's just like, all right. He just keeps drinking some more booze. It's just, all right. Usopp gets plastered drunk in this episode, and it's a plot point, and I love it. Okay? All right. So, let's talk about Koby really quick. So, Koby meets Garp later. He kind of tells him, like, I was listening to you earlier, talking to Mihawk and stuff, and Garp is just eating a giant pile of steaks, like a giant pile of rare steaks. He's just, no, that's good. No, the next one. Okay, the next one now. So this is, like, that's a thing. Like, they focus on that. In the manga and anime, it's a lot funnier whenever an anime character, like, shoves a bunch of food in their mouth really quick. Here, they utilize it. They show that Luffy eats a bunch of food, that Garp eats a bunch of food. But it's not, like, the whole focus of a scene. It's just like, holy crap, Garp's eating like 20 steaks. That's nuts. And then they just kind of move on, right? So Koby brings up, he's like, you know, sending Dracul Mihawk after Luffy, that's not something the Marines should do. You know, that's not fair. And Garp is like, listening at, you know, doorways to your superior officers, that's not something that should happen either. And he's like, yeah, he's like, no, come on in here. Come on in here, son. Sit on old Pappy Garp's lap. It's story time. So basically I love this scene because Garp is kind of looking at Koby and he's just like, oh, Koby. Oh, Koby. All right. It's time for you. It's time for you and I to have the talk. Time to have the talk about how the world really works, okay? So sit down. He even pours him some like whiskey. Just like, here you go. And Koby just kind of looks at it and he's, okay. And just like, all right, look, here's the deal. And so Garp tells him, listen, the justice, equality for all in this world, it's not feasible. It's not possible. There are different laws for different types of people. For pirates and others, and Koby's looking at Garp and he's just like, well, that's not fair. And he's like, no, it isn't fair. It's 100% not fair. And Garp tells him, like, when I started the Marines 50 years ago is when I joined Koby, and I was just the same as you. I was idealistic. I was young. I thought I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna be this beacon of justice and save the world from all the pirates. And then I realized the world is not simple. So you cannot have simple laws when the world itself is not simple. It's way more complicated than that. You have to adapt, Koby. That is the key to being a successful Marine. He also says, I could have been Fleet Admiral by now, but I always turn down the promotion every single time. I love that because that is something that is included later, much later in the manga when we're talking more about Garp. Garp turning down the position to be Admiral and then eventually Fleet Admiral. He says Fleet Admiral in the live action, which I believe. Garp and Sengoku was an admiral around the time that Shiki attacked Marineford. So around the time Roger was executed, that was when Sengoku was an admiral. Garp could have easily have been an admiral at the same time Sengoku was. They would have both become admirals at the same time, easily, okay? And so, yeah, Garp could have been, if he followed the same stratum, he's probably looking at it the same way from like a lens of Sengoku. Like, Sengoku, my friend, he ended up taking the position to be an admiral, and then maybe they offered it to Garp first, and there was one opening, and they offered it to Garp, and Garp turned it down, and Sengoku was their second choice. So he took the promotion, and then eventually Sengoku was given the promotion by Kong to become Fleet Admiral. So the way Garp is looking at this is like, I could have easily have been Fleet Admiral by now if I chose that life, if I wanted to do that. But he says to Koby, he's like, no, because I'd have to do things by their rules, their way, and I don't want to give up my freedom, right? So he tells him that. And he also says, he kind of ends the conversation by saying, the Marines might not be equal. It might not be pure justice, that idealistic justice that you are viewing, Koby. But in a world without the Marines, it would be absolute anarchy and chaos. So the Marines, it kind of like what Garp is saying to him is like, look, the Marines are not perfect. I'm not claiming they are, but we need to have them. Because if the Marines aren't around, it's going to be a million times worse. You'd have pirates just burning and murdering and just rampaging, pillaging all over the place. So that's kind of the advice Garp gives Koby, and I think it's pretty good advice coming from him. And he's like, and now, can you accept that and move on and try to become a good Marine and like try to make the world as best as you can? And Koby's like, I think I can. And he gets up and walks away, and Garp has this line where he says, because earlier he said that Marine uniform doesn't seem to fit you, and now he looks at it, he's like, I think that uniform is beginning to fit you a little bit. Yeah. So that's the conversation between Garp and Koby. I really liked it in this episode. I thought it just fit, okay? Because it does talk about Garp's little wealth of experience, and that's the thing, like, because we are dealing with a different timeline here, it's like, okay, if things are going differently, and also we have the benefit now of having this wealth of information throughout the rest of the One Piece world. Like, we know that stuff's going to happen, because we have access to it. Like, the writers know, like Matt Owens and everybody knows what's going to happen. So you can include that stuff with Garp in the show. For a first-time viewer, like Garp talking about the Fleet Admiral and stuff, it's going to be like, oh, Garp could have taken a position, but a promotion, but he chose to turn it down. For manga readers and people that are caught up with the series, you understand 100% like why Garp did that. Like, it's all kind of explained. So I love that scene, yeah. Let's see. We talked about that. Yeah, let's move on to that now. Let's move on to that scene. Okay. So Luffy is in the kitchen at night, and he's kind of just, they spend a lot of days at the Baratie. It's not something that's like super apparent in the episode of just how many days are passing, because you got to figure, like, Garp has to radio Mihawk. He's in the Grand Line. He tells him about Luffy. It's going to take a couple of days for Mihawk to get from the Grand Line to the Baratie. So, you know, they spend it, like, I guess a week or so maybe at the Baratie, something like that, because this scene's also going to include Gin. I was really happy they included him, because Gin was not on the initial cast list, so I was like, maybe Gin just didn't get, maybe he just didn't get cast or whatever. They're just going to write him out. Gin is played by, once again, apologies if I butcher your name, Litha Bam. He does a good job. He just has a one little scene, though, and it's maybe they could have done something different with it, but at least it's included. It is the scene, and I feel like this is a scene that was pushed, because it was like, listen, we need to have this scene of Sanji feeding Gin. That is something that it happens in the manga. We have to have this in some capacity, okay? So it's a very brief scene. Sanji and Luffy are in the kitchen, kind of just talking while Luffy's doing dishes. Sanji's just at a table smoking a cigarette. And they have a conversation about dreams, and they begin to talk about Sanji's dream of finding the All Blues. So he talks about it. There's this smooth music playing in the background as Sanji's talking about his dream. Taz does a great job there explaining, like, oh yeah, there's, you know, you have the 4 blues, east, south, west, you know, north blue and everything like that. And the North Blue! No, he doesn't do anything like that. He's like, yeah, you got the 4 blues. And then there's this one sea that, like, where all the blues come together, and there's fish there that no one's ever seen, no one's ever tasted. I want to find it someday. And so they're just talking about dreams and stuff, and it's a very nice scene. And then Gin shows up at the back door. He's, like, pounding on the door, like, please, someone help, food. And so they let Gin into the kitchen, and Sanji's like, oh yeah, sure, man, you know, what do you want? I can make you some fried rice. Yeah, let's do that. And so he makes him the dish, I believe is also in the Sanji cookbook, and Gin is there, like, shoveling the food in his mouth. He's like, oh my god, thank you so much, I could have died. And so Gin is kind of just played off. He doesn't fight Sanji or anything like that. He doesn't even say that he's part of, like, the Krieg pirates. What happens is he's kind of just there, and he feeds him. And then when Luffy brings up the One Piece, Gin is like, the One Piece? My captain was looking for it too. We were in the Grand Line looking for him. We had a huge pirate armada of 5,000 men and 50 ships, and we met nothing but ruin. I am the only survivor. Give up on the One Piece. Now, the only thing I would have changed about that scene is basically what happened in the manga, where Gin mentions Mihawk. Gin mentions not just that Krieg was looking for the One Piece and they had this giant armada, but he mentions specifically the armada was wiped out by one man. That is good in the manga because that is establishing Mihawk in the next chapter of how when he finally shows up, like, holy crap, you know what I mean? Like, how strong this dude is, how he was able to wipe out an entire fleet of ships in just one attack, okay, or one dude doing all this. So Gin doesn't actually mention Mihawk by name. He doesn't say my entire fleet was wiped out by one person. He just says our fleet was wiped out and I was the only survivor. So I feel like he could have added that in and it would have established, because, like, Mihawk shows up in, like, the next scene, you know, just how dangerous this guy is. But then again, I guess it's not necessary for Gin to say that, because in the live action, we've already seen what Mihawk could do. Like, the viewers know what Mihawk is capable of, because we saw that earlier scene with Krieg. But as for Luffy and Sanji actually listening to the story, they don't know the level of terror. You know what? Maybe that it was intentional to cut that, because from what we're going to see later with how the duel with Zoro ends up, because it's a completely different kind of a setup, and also what happens, you know, like, it's the actual duel itself is the same, but the setup is different. So maybe they cut that scene out so Luffy wouldn't have any idea of what Mihawk was really capable of, okay? Because there's going to be a line, if Gin told Luffy what Mihawk can do, that might skew Luffy's perspective on talking to Zoro later. Maybe it might be something like that. Oh, one more thing before we get to that scene with Mihawk is there is a scene with Nami and Zoro where they have a little bit of a drinking contest or a game where they're just sitting at the bar. Usopp's getting absolutely is like doing drunk dance Usopp, which is pretty funny because it's probably the first time he's been this drunk. And so Nami and Zoro are looking at each other like, you know, I can't read you, you can't read me. It's like, oh, okay, well, let's have a drinking competition. You know, I'll guess something about you, and if I'm wrong, I'll drink. If I'm right, you have to drink, kind of thing, right? And so this is a clever way of kind of setting up some stuff for the next episodes with Nami and Arlong and everything. And so Zoro says, like, oh, you were a thief in a big city, and that's where you grew up, and you were living in the city, and you were robbing all the rich people, all the nobles in the city. And Nami's like, drink. And Zoro's like, really, I was wrong. And he's just like, yeah, I grew up in a small little village near a tangerine grove, okay? And then Nami looks at Zoro and just like, I bet you didn't have any friends growing up. And Zoro's like, I had one friend. And then Nami's like, all right, fair enough. And then she takes a drink. And so that was a nice little moment between both of them there, okay? They're starting to learn each other. There is also a scene where Nami, I think because she's beginning to realize she's getting too close to the Straw Hats. You know, she's starting to have actual emotions with the Straw Hats. Like, she's beginning to, like, feel for them and stuff. And so this is antithetical to what Nami always does. You know, she robs pirates. She doesn't become friends with them. So she's like, okay, I need to get the hell out of here. I need to get back to the Konomi Islands. I need to get back to Kokoyashi and just get away from the Straw Hats, rob them blind, get the hell out of here, right? So she goes over to this to the bar, and there's a dude at the bar. I don't think he's a guy that shows up in the One Piece manga. I think this is an original character for the anime. But he's basically a dude that's like, oh, if you need passage to the Konomi Islands, if you have Barry, then I can take you there. I'm shoving off tomorrow morning. If you want to meet me at the dock, we can go. And Nami's like, okay. I'll meet you there and I'll pay you. And he's like, okay. So, yeah, instead of Nami stealing the ship, it's Nami booking passage on another vessel heading to the Konomi Islands. The difference there, you'll see in a second. Because by the time Mihawk shows up in the manga and cuts the ship in half and Zoro challenges him to a duel, Nami is already gone. She is gone like the wind, okay? She already, Johnny and Yosaku would have been there. They're not in this, unfortunately. It would have been cool to see Johnny and Yosaku because I do like their characters, but they weren't in this. And so Nami kind of like, you know, looks at Arlong's bounty poster, fools them, knocks them off the Mary, and then sails away, okay? So they're not here. So Nami was never actually present during the duel. So we're seeing what would have happened if Nami would have stayed with the crew. What would have Nami's reaction been to Zoro dueling Mihawk? Because after Nami did sail away, she began to cry in the manga. That scene where she's sailing away, she's weeping. She's just like, yeah, whatever, guys. It's just whatever. Belmere, I miss you, you know. And she's like sailing back to the village. But I think she's also crying just because, like, yeah, she's remembering her mom and friends and everything like that. But, you know, she's upset because, given her circumstances, she can't really have friends. You know, and that hurts her, okay? So if she would have stayed in the manga, maybe something similar to this would have happened. Who knows? Well, anyway, in the live action, they're all hanging out at the bar. Zoro, Usopp, and Nami. Usopp is at the bar, and there's this awesome tracking shot where you see Usopp and this, like, random lady next to him, okay? And Usopp is telling this drunk story of how they fought against the Marines earlier in the episode, right? Of course, Usopp is drunk, and he's telling this story from his own perspective, so he's like, and the Marines came attacking, and I just straight shot right through their center mast, knocked down the sail, wiped out the whole Marine fleet single-handedly. And so the camera is moving slowly. So you see Usopp and then the woman to his left. And then the camera's slowly moving. So it's just Usopp in the center. And then it starts moving to Usopp's other side. And then you see Mihawk sitting at the bar drinking some wine. Great attention to detail, by the way. Mihawk drinking the wine. It's great. But then so Mihawk was sitting next to Usopp as he's telling this drunk story the entire time. And then Mihawk looks over and he's like, I'm the great Captain Usopp, man. And Mihawk's like, so you're the captain then? He's like, well, not like actually, technically. I'm like kind of Luffy's the captain, technically, I would say. And then Mihawk's like, oh, Monkey D. Luffy. He's like, yep, that's him. And just like, I would like to meet him. And then Usopp just looks at Mihawk, and there's like 2 seconds where he's just like, yeah, sure. Come and meet the whole crew. Hey, guys, come look at my best friend. My new best friend I made. It's fucking Mihawk. Drunk Usopp and Mihawk. Great comedy duo, I have to say. It's fantastic, okay? So Usopp is like, yeah, come meet the whole crew. Now, Luffy is actually in the back washing dishes, so he's not there right now. He's back with Sanji, okay? But Nami and Zoro are sitting at the bar, so he brings them over to them. of course, Zoro immediately sees Mihawk. He's like, I know you. You're Dracula Mihawk. And then he's just like, I'm looking for your captain, Monkey D. Luffy. And Nami is trying to play it up like, Luffy, we don't know any Luffy. We have no idea who you're talking about, right, Zoro? And Zoro is just in full-on business mode. He's just like, I've been following your career since I was a child. It's an honor to finally meet you, sir. And Mihawk's just like, thank you. Just, yeah, sure, whatever. It's like the curse of the strongest with Mihawk. He has to deal with this. He not only has to deal with people trying to duel him all the time, he also has to deal with the constant praise. Oh my god, Mihawk, sir, you're incredible. I've been following your career ever since I was a child. Yes, I know. You grew up in a tiny little village out in the middle of nowhere, and you wanted to be the greatest swordsman in the world, and you look to me with amazing sense of pride and ambition. I have heard it all before. So this is the moment where Zoro, he's like, oh, well, I've been following you since I was a child. It's an honor to meet you, but it's a shame because now you're going to die. And he's very serious. And Nami's like, what the hell? What the fuck are you doing? And just like, tomorrow at dawn, we're going to duel. And Mihawk looks at him and just like, all right. Once again, it's like, all right, I'm kind of obligated to, I'm the greatest swordsman in the world. This is the job description. This is what I signed up for. So they agree to do their duel, but it doesn't happen immediately. Nami is present. Luffy is not, and it's going to be the following morning. We're going to do this like Old West style, I love this because, the scene in the manga was good, but there was so much other stuff going on, okay? Like, Krieg is attacking, Nami just left with the Mary, there's this chaos at the Baratie, and then on top of all of that, Zoro challenges Mihawk to a duel right then and there. So there's a lot of other stuff happening at the same time. This is the focus of the episode. This is the main conflict of the episode, okay? So it puts on way more focus to detail of, like, the gravitas to this and the tension that's being brought up to this, because it's not immediate. So they go back to the Mary. Usopp goes into the kitchen to tell Luffy, like, hey, Luffy, there's something going on with Zoro. You need to come and look at this. You need to come and talk to him, right? And Zeff is in there talking to Luffy a little bit. Luffy tells Zeff off a little bit. Like, he's like, you know what? Sanji's going to do what he wants to do. He's going to join my crew, and he's going to feed the people that are hungry. He even fed a poor, defenseless pirate right here in your kitchen. And Zeff is like, he did that, did he? And Zeff even kind of smiles like, that little eggplant. I raised him well, right? But then Usopp comes in like, Luffy, Zoro, big sword guy, you need to come. And so they go back to the Mary and they meet up. And Zoro's in there. He's polishing his swords. He's getting everything ready. And then Nami's like, Luffy, you need to talk some sense into him, okay? And they're going over the whole thing like, this is Dracula Mihawk. He's the greatest swordsman in the world. He's going to kill you, Zoro. You're going to die. This is a fight to the death. Zoro even said, this is a fight to the death. And just like, oh my god. Now, to his credit, Luffy has no idea who Mihawk even is at this point. So maybe that's why they omitted that earlier scene with Gin. And Luffy is just like, well, Zoro, maybe this isn't a good idea, because he's like getting some of the information like, well, Zoro, if you're gonna die, maybe it's not a good idea to do this. And so Zoro looks at Luffy and he's like, Luffy, what was that thing you said that I said to you way back at Shellstown when you found me tied up on the cross? And he's just like, I kill your kind for a living? The pirates? He's like, pirates. He's like, no, not that, the other thing. And just like, oh, right, that you did this. Oh, your dream is to become the greatest swordsman because of a friend, a promise you made to a friend. And Zoro was like, yeah. And so Luffy, now it clicks with him. Even if Luffy knew about Mihawk and knew what he could do, it has now clicked with him. This is Zoro's dream in the same way that finding the One Piece is Luffy's dream. And so Luffy's like, Nami, I can't tell him to not pursue his dream. Like, it's just against everything. Like, if I told Zoro to give up on his dream, then I'd have to give up on my dream. And it's like, that's not how we do things, right? And so that's a little bit of the will of D talking right there, I would say. And just like, no, I'm not doing that. And Zoro is like, he agrees, obviously. So we have this really tense scene where we have All Night, where, like, what the Straw Hats are doing, right? So, like, we see Usopp just puking, just, oh, God, I'm so miserable. And Nami's just getting ready to leave. She packs up everything. She grabs her bag. She steals the map from the Grand Line, and she's getting ready to go at first light. And then you have Zoro just sitting down. We saw the shot in the trailer, actually. Zoro just sitting down, with his swords in front of him on the table, and he's just, like, in Zen meditation, like, all night. Like, and the music carries the scene. I like this because it's like, okay, Imagine if the duel did not just imagine if Zoro had prep time. If anybody out there was thinking like Zoro versus Mihawk, but Zoro has one night of prep time, would that have changed anything? No, wouldn't have changed a damn thing. But there's that, and there's also just not so much prep time, but the tension, okay, of like the crew actually discussing this, okay, and Nami is present and sees like, you're my friend, I don't want you to die, and that's a big moment for Nami. That is it's a big moment for Zoro here too, but that's the cool thing about this episode. It works in both Zoro's stuff and Nami's stuff kind of simultaneously, okay? Setting up stuff for Arlong Park later. But Nami's like, listen, you want me to say that you're the best swordsman? Fine, you're the best swordsman. You're the best I've ever seen, but you're not as good as him. You will die. You're my friend. I don't want to see you die. And then Zoro's like, you told me you don't have any friends. And Nami's like, okay, you know what? Screw this. Go do what you want. I'm going to go leave. I'm out of here, right? So we cut to the next morning after this really intense night of everybody just kind of sitting around and Usopp puking up his guts. And then Nami goes out on the dock with that guy with the Hawaiian shirt like, oh, you heading out? We leaving? And then Nami's just like a moment where you don't know if Nami's going to go with them or not. And then we have the duel. Okay, and Nami chooses to stay. I'll just say that now. Nami chooses to stay. So it's Nami, Usopp, and Luffy that show up to watch the duel between Zoro and Mihawk. And it happens in the early morning hours out on the front deck of the Baratie. The restaurant's not open yet, so Sanji and Zeff are not here or anything. They're still asleep in the restaurant or getting ready for breakfast service or whatever. So they have the whole place to themselves, basically. So there's this big dock in front of the Baratie. And so they're standing on it, and it's like, okay, this is it. This is the battle. So Zoro takes out his swords. Mihawk takes out, what's it called? I wrote it down, actually. Kogatana. It just means small knife. Kogatana, the little necklace thing, little knife blade that he uses to eat his takoyaki. So he just takes it out. This duel plays out pretty much exactly the way it does in the manga. That's another thing. They looked at this scene and they're like, okay, look, this is one of the most defining moments of not just Zoro's character in the story, but of One Piece in general. Zoro dueling Mihawk at the Baratie. This is a huge deal. They don't really change much with the fight. Some of the stuff, like, it has to be, like, because, like, just manga anime, things have to be scaled a little bit differently. Like, the exact location it takes place is a little different. But the basic idea, it's in front of the Baratie. It's on a big platform. The fight maybe is in a little bit of a little smaller location. I think they fought on... Didn't they fight on the wreckage of Krieg's ship in the original, I think? But it's the same idea. Big area for them to fight, okay? But in terms of the techniques used, Zoro uses onigiri... Mihawk takes out his knife, blocks it with one thing, just knocks him away. Zoro tries again, and Mihawk is just knocking him away with this tiny little butter knife. And then eventually Zoro tries to use Tiger Trap. That's when Mihawk stabs him with the knife blade right here. All of that, it plays out, basically a 1-to-1. It just in live action, and it works really well for that. Mihawk adds some lines. He says, I don't hunt rabbits with a cannon, son. That's in the manga. He does I don't know if the frog line was. I think it might have been the croak. Oh, you're just like a frog in the well. Croak. I think that might have been added. Zoro does not yell out his attack names. He doesn't like onigiri, Tiger Trap, or Tiger Hunt, or 3,000 Worlds. He doesn't yell out the attack names. But other than that, this plays out pretty much exactly like it does in the manga, and they really paid attention to detail for the choreography here, okay? It's great. Mihawk names Yoru when he stabs him with the knife, and then Zoro is still... Because all the people... You gotta figure all the people that Mihawk has fought before in the past. You know what I mean? All the freaking people that he has fought and killed. How many give up after getting stabbed once by the little knife? Zoro doesn't give up. He's still coming at it. This tenacious, the look in his eyes. And so Mihawk is just like, what drives you and everything like that. And he's like, oh, it's a promise I made to a friend. He's like, okay. So he puts away the knife and he's like, I will finish you off with Yoru. So he names it. He names Yoru he doesn't say the name of the sword in the manga. That actually doesn't come up until way later. I think Tashigi is the one that says the name way in Marineford. I mean, it takes a while. So it's nice that Mihawk himself actually said the name of his sword, because that's kind of important. So he calls it Yoru, which just means knight in Japanese. He pulls out Yoru. Yoru looks fantastic. The music in the background is like Mihawk's little Spanish theme happening. It's great. So they're about to do the final clash here where Zoro does the 3,000 worlds, and of course that's CG, but it looks good. It's like the swords are spinning. That looks fine. There's only one shot in the whole duel that I don't think worked that great, and it's coming up. But other than that, the rest of the duel is like 10 out of 10 for me, okay? So they do the 3,000 worlds. They jump up in the air. Mihawk hits the swords with Yoru. We see the clash. Zoro lands with his swords. And then the shot where his two unnamed katanas break and they shatter. That one looked kind of, you could tell the CG with that, where the blades just kind of, they kind of fall down. I was like, I don't know if there was any way to make that look good. I'm sure they tried a couple of different ways maybe to do it, but just the way the swords broke was kind of like, it looked, okay, that's obviously very fake, but other than that one scene where the swords break, the rest of the duel was perfect, okay? Zoro gets up, he does like, the scars on the back are a swordsman's shame, and Mihawk just looks at him and he's just like, magnificent, and then he slashes him down, and there's a scene in the background where right before Mihawk to slash Zoro, Nami takes Usopp's hand and kind of holds his hand. Not in like a romantic way, just like I'm about to see one of my friends die in front of me. I kind of want to hold somebody's hand right now to kind of brace it for that, okay? That was a nice touch. And that was a nice touch to really genuinely show Nami cares for Zoro and the Straw Hats right now. She genuinely cares for them. And she thinks she's about to see one of her friends die before her eyes. Now, of course, Mihawk does not, like, slice him in half. He slices him, and he goes down. He loses consciousness for a bit, and was like, Zoro! And Mihawk begins to have a conversation with Luffy, and he begins to say to him, he's like, so you're Monkey D. Luffy. Oh, earlier when they arrive at the duel, he's like, I like your hat. Because Mihawk knows Shanks, obviously, but that's not really addressed there. This is more of a Zoro thing. But anyway, he's like, Monkey D. Luffy, what is your goal? He's like, I'm going to be king of the pirates. He's like, that's a more treacherous dream than even besting me. But who knows? People like you, the world could use more wild cards. You might just do it at that. And so he leaves, and he's just like, Zoro, come back and find me, and then you will, when you're stronger, and we'll have a proper duel. That plays out pretty much exactly how it does in the manga. He leaves, and instead of Zoro being in the boat, being cared for by Johnny and Yosaku, he's just on the deck of the Baratie here in front of Nami and Usopp and Luffy, and then he regains consciousness briefly, holds up the sword, and has the moment where, like, I swear I will never lose again. And then he's on the ground, and then he just passes out, and then that's the end of the episode, okay? So those last shots, that last scene with the duel, it's pretty much a good comparable to the manga. Like, they knew that, like, look, we can change a lot of stuff. We have a lot of leeway with this live action, but there's certain scenes, like, unless it's just physically impossible to do this, with the actors and with CG and with the sets and stuff that we have. Like, unless it's just physically impossible to do this, we'll have to change it. But with this scene, they put all of their effort into this. They went 110% with this, and I think, except for that one little scene where the swords break, it was flawless. Okay, it was perfect. And then that wasn't even like something wrong in the episode. That was just like the CG wasn't good. Okay, I'm not really sure how you would have made it. I guess maybe something that might have made it look better is if the swords didn't just like crack apart and just maybe if the swords they just exploded or something, the blades just shattered like glass or something. That would have been cooler. I don't know if they could have done something like that, but whatever. I'm not even gonna harp on that because that was such a minor nitpick in all this. Okay, that was an incredible episode. All right, so that was episode 5 of the One Piece live action, and yeah, that took about an hour for me to discuss. So if I had to do episode 6, we'd be here for another hour. What did you guys think of episode 5 and the changes they made and the things they didn't change? Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll get back to episode 6 and then 7 and then 8 at some point in the future. Thanks for watching, everybody. Signing out.